Okay. It looks like we are live. How is everyone today? Thank you so much for joining me on this Thursday. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Jason Levine, and for today's lit live stream, I don't know that I'd consider that lit necessarily, but for today's live stream, going to be talking about some audio-related things, specifically an audio gem that I use all the time, really literally all the time. And it's something which I'm sure many of you are maybe familiar with. Maybe you've probably seen this in other software, on other hardware devices, and just didn't really know how to understand it or how to use it to your advantage. And it's quite simply the real-time frequency analysis panel that we have in Adobe Audition. There is not a single mix, a single remaster, any kind of restoration that I do where I don't keep this panel running constantly in real time so I can monitor and really see what the frequency content is doing at any given time during the playback of a track. So that's what we're going to cover today. I'm going to go into detail here about how to read it, how to use it, how to make sense of it. And truly, once you understand how this thing works, it's going to make you a better audio engineer. It's going to make you better at not only identifying potential problems that you may not have necessarily seen or heard, and that's kind of the key, but eliminate problems earlier on in the process. You know, the worst thing that can happen is you start cutting something together. You're working with different clips, different audio bits. You start processing and tweaking them, only to find out that ultimately there's some kind of a subsonic hum or a really super high-pitched whistle that nobody heard on set. But after you compress it and do everything and then go to your MP4 or publish on YouTube, suddenly there's this weird ring that you just can't seem to figure out or how to get rid of. So that's what we're going to cover today. So as always, thank you so much for joining me on Twitter, on Periscope, on Facebook. Facebook, once again, I don't know what's going on this week. I'm not even seeing a preview now. It just disappeared out of the browser. So hopefully people are still seeing it in Facebook. I can't see your comments. I can't see you. And frankly, I've had it with that. So I don't know what's going on with this. FB, fix that or something. I don't think it's Safari or Chrome. I've tried both. All right, couple quick shouts here. Donald Ping, how are you doing? 3 days in a row, man. I know. I feel so honored. Afternoon, F. Sminik. Akeem, how are you doing? All right, we've got DJ Arcane as well coming to us, and I saw momentarily lots of eyeballs, but I don't know who's on Facebook because once again I'm not able to view it right now, which is really ridiculous. So hopefully everything is coming through. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. And that just means that the other social networks will get more direct commentary. Okay, so let me go ahead and kill the musical background here. Also, you can see I've got some additional party lights. That is not an effect, by the way. That's an actual light generator behind me. Light generator? Is that what I wanted to say? Okay. So let me go ahead and pull up this file here, and let's go ahead and get started. All right. Are you finding the moving colored lights behind me distracting? EDMC Low Poet, what's up? Oh, thank you very much for that comment. I really appreciate it. Nice. All right. Tell me if you find those lights distracting and I can kill them. I just wanted to add a little flair. There was a little tweet going around yesterday, and someone said something about it's a party when I'm around, so I thought I'd bring the party to you today. By the way, I don't know if that's true. You know, I go to bed super early. Okay. Aunt Pruitt, what is up, man? So great to see you. I will teach you indeed. And Aunt, I'll tell you, I don't want to embarrass you live, but, you guys should check out. If you haven't checked out Aunt Pruitt's YouTube channel, you can also find his stuff on Instagram and Twitter. He did a fantastic video yesterday where he did a whole bunch of sound design. Props, man. Expertly done. It was great. And what I'm going to talk about today is only going to augment all that knowledge that you've already got. So very cool. All right. Pavel, it's a little distracting. Okay, F. Sminik likes the lights. Donald doesn't mind. EDMC, you got an album coming. I'm using every info. Oh, well, that's awesome. Well, don't ever hesitate to hit me up if you've got questions, again, on Twitter or directly on YouTube. You'll know that I I answer everything there. So, okay, I'll keep checking back, and if the lights are distracting more people, we'll turn it off. Okay, so let's take a quick listen to this. So this is a track of mine, still unreleased. It'll come out eventually. You can even hear the slate. Curiously, when you hear the slate, you'll hear that this was recorded 19 years ago in one of my older studios, and it's an instrumental track called Silver Stripes. And I want you to just take a listen over the stream, and we'll see if you can hear any problems. You may hear a little bit, maybe not, but overall, it depends on what everyone's listening through. Take a quick listen here, and then we're going to come back in just a second. All right, here we go. Silver Stripes.
Okay, Silver Stripes mix number 8.
One, two, ready?
That's probably enough of that. All right. So, did you hear anything out of the ordinary on there? So you've got a bunch more people joining on Twitter Periscope. What's up, Teddy? MCS Effect, Cameron, Adam Kranitz, David Presenter. Do you hear anything out of the ordinary? Okay, I almost stole my thunder a little for a second there because I was like, oh, I'm not showing the frequency analysis panel. No. Okay. So there's two things which I have added after the fact to this track to illustrate a point. The first was there's a subsonic tone permeating through the entire thing. Now, even if you're not a pro audio editor, if I'm sitting in my studio, now, of course, this has a lot to do with how you monitor. And part of what I want to also talk about today is why frequency analysis, like all the tools that we have in all the Adobe applications, is just one additional method. It's not the only, it's not the best, none of that matters. It's one more way to verify what do you have, right? Because sometimes your ears will deceive you. Sometimes your eyes will deceive you, right? You've been grading all day long, right? You've been working 6, 8, 10, 14 hours, whatever. You know, you come back, you've been sitting in there, you look at stuff that you did from the day before and you're like, oh my God, the stuff in the last 3 hours is terrible. Because you just start to lose perspective, right? Not all, many, most. I'm the first to say, yeah, if I'm mixing for 10 hours, worthless. Maybe years ago, but even then, you know, you just get too in it. You get too close to it, and you got to step away. So a lot of times your eyes deceive you, your ears deceive you. And having additional tools to verify what's going on will just really give you a bit more insurance and make you feel a bit more confident about what you're doing. So even if you're not a super pro audio editor, as I look at this, and let's just say I were playing this back on computer speakers. Now, I'm not going to hear this little bit of noise right here. Now, you notice you're like, oh, I don't even see anything registering on the meters. Right now, I've got the meters at showing a 24 dB scale. Let's go to a 72 dB range. All right. So some of you, depending upon what you're listening through, you might be hearing that, okay? You can see that it's resonating at around minus 28, which would theoretically normally be like, yeah, you'd hear it for sure, regardless of speakers. But as I told you, what this actually is a 35 hertz sub sine wave that I generated and stuck throughout the entire track here. So if you're listening on computer speakers or your phone, I'm not talking about headphones because they will have more bass, of course, but you know, depending upon your listening environment, you may not even hear that. But visually, looking at this, you're probably like, that doesn't look good. Why is that so thick when I'm listening and I don't hear anything? There shouldn't be some thick line going on there. So there's something there. Okay, so we're going to get to that in a second. Now, the unseen, the thing that you can't see in this waveform at all, is that I've also placed a 15.5 kilohertz tone, also a sine wave, also going throughout this entire track at around minus 18 dB or so. Okay? Now, you may say 15.5K, what's that? Well, traditionally, back in the day, if you were in a studio and you had like CRT monitors in there for one thing or another, one reason or another, if you've ever left a CRT monitor running with no signal going to it, no, like no box feeding it with anything, no Blu-ray, whatever it is, oftentimes those monitors will emit what's known as a carrier tone, and that tone is approximately 15K. You probably, experienced it if you were growing up in your parents' house, if they had still tube-based TVs and stuff. You walk into the room and you kind of hear that very high-pitched whistle. It's not quite dog level. 15.5K is very audible, especially for younger humans. You will lose it over time, and if you don't take care of your ears, you'll lose it sooner than later. But you are not going to hear that on a phone. You're not going to hear that on laptop speakers. You're probably not going to hear that, in most cases, on most things, until you start processing this file. So again, if this were music being used in a video, it gets compressed, it gets limited, the whole thing gets brick wall limited at the end. Something is going to be revealed here. And you may not hear it until it's kind of too late. So this is where we're going to talk about frequency analysis, all right? So let's pull this panel up first and foremost. Now, I haven't even done anything yet. In fact, here, wait, let me go back to the beginning. Let me wind it all the way back. Okay. So let's start playing back.
Okay, Silver Stripes mix number 8.
All right. So right away, you see this thing resonating down here? All right. Right away, we have a problem, right? We can see that. There's this, what is this? It's around minus 32. There's just something, some sharp spike at approximately, now if I hover my mouse over, again, we're going to talk about what all this detail means. There's a readout on the side that will actually tell me this is approximately 1549, so 15,490 hertz. There's some tone that's permeating throughout everything. By the way, a lot of external mixers. I even have a couple of classic Mackeys over here running all the keyboards and synths. Oftentimes they too, and you can see this spectrally, you can also see it in this frequency analysis, will often emit these high frequency tones, especially if you've got things like phantom power engaged and maybe nothing's connected. Sometimes even when stuff is connected, it's just a little anomaly in some of these slightly lower end mixers. You'll run into that. Additionally, we've got silence at the moment, and you can see there's this huge bump of sonic energy right here. And again, if I hover my mouse down here below, you'll see this gives real-time readouts of frequency. We're going to talk about this in a second. But this is approximately, again, sort of 35 hertz right here, okay? So all this stuff going on there, which you might not have heard, you might not have seen in the waveform, all right? But it's there, okay? So let's talk about what we're looking at and how this all works. And I'm going to go through literally every part of this so you truly understand. Because once you understand this, much like compression, this is going to make you a better sound editor. It's going to make you a better mixer. It's going to make you a better audio engineer. Even if that's not something you've ever wanted to do, you're going to get better at it just by knowing what the heck it is that you're looking at here. So first and foremost, before we even get into the stuff at the top, this is showing you frequency along the horizontal axis. So, okay, so in this case, this file is 44.1. So CD standard, if you can see that down here. I'm just zooming in for you so you can read that, all right? So it's 44.1, 32-bit float stereo, okay? So we have from 0 hertz all the way on the left, where you can't see because my head is right there. Here, you know what? I'm going to take the camera off for a second. You don't need to see me. Plus, I'm getting in the way. Hold on, get myself out of here. So down here, this is 0 hertz, okay? And then all the way at the right side, we will have the highest frequency based on the Nyquist limit. So at 44.1, the highest frequency is 22,050, 22050 hertz, okay? If this were 48K, if we were working with a video file, audio from video, this would be 24 kilohertz, okay? So you've got frequency along the horizontal. Along the vertical, you have amplitude, and that amplitude is effectively measuring in a negative logarithmic scale because digitally, remember, 0 is the loudest we can get, right? So 0 is total saturation loudness, and negative, negative infinity, but in this case, minus, because we're in 32-bit float, let's just say 24-bit, minus 140 dB is complete and total silence, okay? So again, 0 being the hottest you can get. All right, so we've got amplitude vertically, frequency horizontally. Okay, you've got 2 lines represented here because this is stereo. Now these used to be uniquely colored. I don't know why we stopped doing that. Also, I can't seem to find a preference to turn that back on. So maybe we've just eliminated it altogether. Yeah, I can't see. There's nothing in here that I can see that says keep them uniquely colored. If anyone finds that, we may have moved that preference, and even I don't know where it is. It's kind of annoying that they're the same color for left and right, but that's okay. All right, so let's go to the top. So we're going to start all the way at the top here with scale, all right? So for scale, you have 2 options. Now, even if you're not an audio pro, these terms are going to seem probably pretty familiar to you. You've got linear scale and logarithmic scale. Now, you'll notice that I'm in logarithmic. Logarithmic, typically people will say that logarithmic kind of represents visually the way we hear things. So in other words, you can see that there's a fairly sizable section. If you use the grid lines here, let's see there's 1, 2, 3, 4 vertical grid lines. So the first 2 grid lines kind of represent the lower frequencies, all right, from around 100 hertz and below. And then we get into the low mids. So here's 200 hertz right here, 400, 700, 1K is this third grid line here. So that's 1,000 hertz, right in the center of the fundamentals of a lot of vocal frequencies and things. All right, 1K. And then it starts to kind of squeeze frequencies together because really, again, 4K, 5K, this is where we hear and understand and interpret the bulk of speech and singing and such. 7, 8, 9, 10 is all compressed right here. And then 10 to 20 kilohertz is actually the same width on this graph as 0 to 10 hertz, which is completely inaudible. You can't hear 10 hertz. You can maybe feel it and probably vomit unknowingly, but you're not going to hear it. 10 to 20, you will hear. But that's the way that logarithmic represents. Now you might say, well, why wouldn't I want to see more detail in here? Well, you can always zoom in. I've got the magic mouse here. You can't see it, I'm not on camera, but if I right click on the magic mouse, you can see what I'm doing along the bottom there. I can zoom in to any specific frequency duration, but you can see that the difference here with logarithmic is that it doesn't list out all of those frequencies as I zoom in. You see 10 here, you see 20 here, and then we can use some of the other data along the side to tell us where we are, but you don't see them. That's by design, because if you want to see more frequencies sort of evenly spaced out, you can go into linear mode, all right? And now if you look, you'll see that really we're looking at kind of 1K bandwidths here. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 22. And again, if this were 48K, this would be, 1K widths for everything all the way up to 24, all right? This is fine, but visually, this doesn't help me as much because the truth is there's really not a lot of change that happens in the 9 to 14K range in general. In other words, this is kind of the center of your view. There's not going to be a lot of activity going on there. And frankly, 16 to 22K, there's very little random activity going on there. And depending upon if this is a compressed file or whatnot, beyond, say, 18K, you're not going to see this doing much of anything. I mean, it'll be moving, but there's nothing, you can't learn anything from that. It's just because there's not a lot of frequency content that exists up there. It's not really anything from your voice. Yes, some upper harmonics of sibilants and things can exist there. Certainly cymbals and such have overtones and things that go into 18 all the way up to 30K. But it doesn't really help you as an engineer. You don't need to see that range. So I never use linear. This doesn't help me. It doesn't help me identify things. And also when playing back, frequencies are too squished together, so I can't really see the bass. Yes, I can zoom in. And notice when I zoom in with linear mode, now you get a complete readout of all the frequencies here. And I think it'll continue to refine it down. Yeah, I mean, you can get down to, individual frequencies here, which is very cool, all right? But I don't use linear. I like logarithmic. It feels more musical. It feels inherently more easy to understand. Oh, there. And now it's showing me there's a zoom level where it eventually does go to. That's funny. It came and it went. Strange. I wonder if that's a bug. I bet it's a bug. Yeah, look. The details are coming back. Now I've got them. They're gone. Okay. Oh, no, now they're there. Okay. Interesting. Okay. So logarithmic mode, it's more musical. It represents sort of how we hear things. This is the most useful for identifying problems. What is up, Desiree? Marcio J.M. Silva. Hi. Okay. Now, right next to logarithmic, this is probably something you'll never use. You have a function here to copy all graph data. So let's say for the ultra nerds, or maybe for someone who's building some kind of, I don't know, crazy data-based, data-driven animation in After Effects, and they like, in this particular moment, see, that's the thing, this is real time, so it's momentary. At this particular time code, in that moment, you can copy all of the data, frequency and amplitude, for all of the points of data, which is represented by an FFT value, which we'll talk about in a second, and export that to the clipboard, all right? And it comes in as a bunch of numbers, again, amplitude and frequency. Probably not going to need to do that. It's in there. I can't remember even why we put that in there a long time ago. There was a reason, but not something that most of you will ever use. Just know that that's what that button does. Now, what is useful, again, in identifying or even trying to copy or mimic equalization between clips, between songs, between audio files, is you have 8 hold positions. And what's really super cool about this is that you can take real-time snapshots, which are color-coded, by the way, of the frequency at any point in time. So let's just go ahead and do that so you can see. Play this back.
2,
All right.
1, 2, ready.
So that was during the count-in. So there's another hold. And let's see what the drums come in. So what this really does is this just allows you, particularly if you have some sonic anomalies, to identify, is this in the whole track? Is it through everything? Am I seeing things? Note that this 15 kilohertz tone, it's in every hold. Note that the 35 hertz, yes, the amplitude changes slightly because sometimes the drums come in, and obviously drums and bass, they're going to augment some of those subsonics with additional harmonics, but there's definitely something here that I can see everywhere. And again, if I were trying to take a look at the overall frequencies of something like a mastered file that I was trying to match, I can use these hold positions to give me a broad view of what it looks like, to say, oh, you know what, look, there's actually quite a nice little bump at 1K and around 3 to 4K, which is really common, by the way, in mastering. Again, that's kind of your vocal fundamentals. That's what we need to do to match our sound to that other one. Ours doesn't have that boost in 1K, 4K, so it's not as clear. It's not as present in the mid-range. So the hold positions are really cool for doing kind of, slightly more detailed but quick visual analysis. Okay. So continuing on from there, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to open up this other file, which is lower amplitude, just so I can talk over it, because I want to be able to show you this in real time while it's also playing. So you tell me if you're having difficulty hearing me, but I think you should be okay. All right. Let's get down to the advanced section at the bottom here. I'm going to twirl this down, and I'm going to need to zoom in. Okay. So the first thing is, how do you want these frequencies displayed? And you can see that we have the option here to display it as lines, which is what you see here. Area, which is basically the lines, but it fills it in. One gets a solid color and the other sort of gets a 50% opacity based on the top channel, in this case the top channel being left. All right. And then you have bars. Okay. Now, for those of you who had classic stereo systems in the 80s. Hold on, I'm just going to switch back to the camera for a second. If you had classic stereo systems in the 80s, these bars might look familiar to you when you had like the the graphical EQ display, right? This was on Sony receivers used to have this all the time. I think a lot of the Panasonic and Toshiba ones had them as well. So this is really showing you, this might be very familiar to you, all right? And you'll notice that there's a lot of detail. In other words, there's so many bars, there's so many frequencies being displayed here. So how do we control that, and what ultimately controls that view? All right. Well, that's controlled by this FFT size, and this is what I was just mentioning moments ago. FFT stands for Fast Fourier Transform, and this is effectively how many frequencies you're slicing this into for visual display. All right. So you'll see that if you twirl this down, you can see a minimum of 32. So if we go to 32 FFT, and this is really very well illustrated with the bars. Now, literally, you're seeing one bar to represent sort of 0 through, 1500 hertz. This second bar is 1501 to 2600, et cetera, et cetera. You're basically seeing 30 vertical frequency representations, right? From 0 hertz to 22K. All right, this is kind of what your old school amplifiers and receivers used to show, right? It was about 20 or 30. So this is fine. There's not a great deal of detail here, all right? And it's not actually physically 30, as you can see. It's probably more like half of that. But it's a small amount of detail. This is not going to be very revealing. It's not going to show you any sort of great detail as to what's happening in your audio. So I would never recommend using an FFT of 32. Now, if you were to go to something like 65,000, which is, you can't even see it on screen there. I didn't even realize we went that high. That is giving you extreme detail, right? So extremely fine detailed divisions. And you can see I'm playing this back right now. It's not even showcasing it to you in real time, actually, because in fact it looks really cool, but I don't know what that's pulsating to, because that certainly isn't representing the rhythm of the track underneath. But you're looking at an extreme amount of frequency detail, and you can see that as you zoom in, this is why bars is cool. You can really zero in on very specific frequency locations. So you sort of want to be somewhere in the middle, right? My personal best case works kind of nice visually, makes sense, and gives you enough detail without being too much or too little, is approximately 4096. So an FFT of 4096 looks like this. It looks like this in lines, which is what I typically work in. And again, if we were to go back to that 65,000, I mean, it looks pretty, it's very fluid, but this isn't even beating in time anymore. Obviously, this uses an enormous amount of power to represent those frequency changes. But there's a great amount of detail there. It's detail that you don't really actually need, not for what this window is for. So 4096 is going to give you really nice, smooth, real-time metering, and it's going to give you enough frequency detail where you can visually identify if there are problems, okay? Super cool. All right, so that's FFT size. I already talked about top channel over here. Moving over a little more to the right is the window function, okay? So this is basically, you have your FFT size, which again is your number, think of it as your slices of frequency. And then you have the windowing function, which is essentially the shape of those frequencies as displayed. Now this really, visually, when I say shape, it's physical shape, but it's actually the focus on more of the center frequency, so centered around what you see in the frequency display there at the bottom, and or less surrounding frequencies. So, and it goes from narrowest to widest, okay? So with something like the triangular windowing function, let me zoom back out here. You'll see it's kind of a momentary change. You can actually momentarily see visually, just for a second, that your frequencies, if you think about the way bandwidth works, they seem to be more like little steeples. They get sharper, okay? Very, very narrow. And you might think, oh, well, don't I want it to be very narrow so it's a bit more accurate? Well, yes, but the difference is that actually the more narrow, the less it's actually hovering on the center fundamental. So again, triangular is the most narrow, Kaiser 180 is the most wide. I'd never use that. I sometimes use triangular. The default, I believe, is Blackman-Harris. This really gives you the most musically representative view for looking at these frequencies in conjunction with FFT. All right? So, again, you're going to get more of the real-time pulse and bounce. And that's what you need here, right? You noticed before, too, as you go into some of the wider functions, I mean, they're still pretty real-time. And that's a good thing, actually. That's the thing that my system's keeping up with them. But shape-wise, this musically, okay? And I don't care if it's just dialogue. Like, I only work on dialogue and sound effects. There's no music. I get it. But harmonically, frequency-wise, Blackman-Harris, it's going to visually tell you better and more and more understandably what's actually happening here. You will never have to change this, by the way. If you're a super audio nerd like me, maybe you care to mess with them. In general, you're never going to have to do that, all right? So FFT 4096, Blackman-Harris as your windowing function, and then you have your dB reference, and this is just that. It's what is your 0 dB reference? If you're coming from some other, maybe this was mixed in a particular way and they didn't use 0 dB as the reference, you can adjust that in this. This doesn't, by the way, adjust the any values of the file itself. This is just the monitoring function here. So if I were to adjust, I'm just going to change this to something like a 20 dB reference. Notice that everything drops down, okay? All right. Versus, here's like a minus 20 dB reference. And then here we are back to 0. So it's just going to raise or attenuate the view based on your 0 reference level. Again, generally, you're never going to have to change this, all right? This is probably something you'll never need to mess with, all right? Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, all right, hold on. Evil Cerise, I see you pinging. Yeah, no, view waveform channels, unique colors. That only applies to the waveform view. It doesn't apply to the spectral frequency display. So because, yes, I obviously did that, so you can see. I don't know when I don't remember when they changed this. It's been a while, by the way. That's not new. But I wish they were still uniquely colored because it's definitely easier to see. All right. And then the last bit here, I got to take my visual away, is this. And here, we can actually stop playback. Just go back down here. Is this left, right, and average. Value, overall frequency, overall musical note. This is, again, this is sort of like nerd data. Not particularly useful, but again, in a moment, if we're looking at something and I'm like, okay, and now I've got it off screen so I can't see, but where am I? Okay, 39.57 hertz, okay? You can barely see it on screen. All right. The note value, if we were to actually look at this, would be somewhere between D and D sharp, okay, 1. So again, we're at the bottom range of our musical scale there. But this just shows you kind of real time where you are. So you can see value at 129 hertz, minus 47 dB for the left channel, minus 54 for the right channel. Average, minus 50 dB. That average is measured in dBFS. That's not a LUFS average. So this isn't using loudness measurement. This is still going off of classic decibels relative to full scale. Okay? The overall musical note, I mean, maybe occasionally that's helpful. It's not helpful if you play it back on a mixed song, because watch what happens when I play this. So here, this is a song that's got vocals and guitar and piano and everything else, right? It's changing every millisecond, because, of course, because there's harmonics in here. It's not just pedal tones. If this were Gregorian chant, this overall musical note would be more useful. All right, quick trivia question for anyone on Facebook. Sorry, anyone on YouTube or Twitter Periscope. Why would overall musical note actually kind of work and tell you something if this were Gregorian chant? Who can answer? It's a simple answer. There's only one answer to this. Why would Gregorian chant be good? Like, oh, I really love the notes they're singing here. Well, I wonder what notes they are. You could use this with Gregorian chant. Why? Seeing if anybody knows the answer to my very bizarre trivia question. All right. 3, 2, 1. No takers. No takers because Gregorian chant is monophonic. There is no harmony. All right. It's single notes sung in unison. That was terribly atonal, but it would be 15 other people and myself all singing, right? There's no harmony, all right? So when there's no harmony, overall musical note works. Otherwise, that's a vanity thing. I don't know why that's in there. It's not going to help you, okay? Close, Evil Cerise. It's really because there's no harmony. It's just singular notes in unison. Okay, so that's it. That's the frequency analysis. So now that you understand this, now you're like, okay, I get it, right? Now we can see, right, very clearly that we've got this problem here at 15K. Lit with Audition. What's the frequency, Jason? I was just listening to REM the other day. That's funny. And you can see that we've got this problem in the subsonics. Now, again, in this view, in the waveform view, this doesn't really tell us enough. Frequency analysis allowed us to identify, in particular, that 15K tone. Okay. By the way, you may also run into this if you work with wireless lavs. A lot of times, wireless lavs you'll end up with frequency interference and noise. Oftentimes, that exists in the 15, 16, 20K range. You'd never hear it in production. Unless your hearing's really good and you're on good monitors, you'd probably never even notice it. Especially if you've got other sound and there's other, maybe there's ambient sound, maybe it was done outside. Unless you're carefully listening, you wouldn't notice. But this is telling you there's a problem. So to take it a step further, we're going to go into the spectral frequency display. And as many of you will know, this is showing us frequency over time. Now in this case, we have frequency along the vertical axis, not horizontal, like in the frequency analysis panel. And then it's time along the horizontal axis, right? So instead of frequency over amplitude, this is time over frequency, and amplitude is represented by color. The closer the color is to black, the quieter the amplitude. The closer the color is to bright yellow, approaching white, the louder the amplitude. And then everything in between, all the gradients, are varying levels of amplitude. So if we zoom in on this, all right, and this is great because I'm also playing, I'm playing my Moog synth on here. So when you play old analog synths and things like, again, the note values are so precise. Also, you'll see occasionally they're not so precise because Moogs detune as you play them. It's really fun to watch. That's super nerdy. What you can see, though, is you can start to reveal problems in your audio, right? Now notice, when I was zoomed out over the stream, I'm not even sure if you can you even see that? You can see that it's kind of running through the whole thing when there's all the program material there. It's right there. So yeah, I mean, you could probably see that, right? Yeah, that's coming through on the stream. But you notice, like, even here, in the silence, when it's just, this is just a sweep, a modulation sweep of one of the, I think that was the VCF filter. It's still there, but it's very faint. So we'd actually have to zoom in. And now, oh my God, look at that. Oh my God, what? How? This is so loud and obnoxious. So when you make a selection like this, by the way, in Spectral, you're only listening to that frequency. So for those of you with good hearing and good headphones right now, if this is driving you nuts, it's only at around -34, so it shouldn't be too bad. But that's a 15K tone, all right? So obviously we don't want that, right? So this is an opportunity where we could use any number of noise reduction processes. I would probably use, the classic capture noise print in the case of something like this. Go into noise reduction, all right? Select the entire file. going to do 100% reduction, reduce it by, it's already at -30, we're going to reduce it by 40 dB, and we're going to set spectral decay to 0. That's going to turn this into effectively a subtractive noise reduction filter. Click apply there, and it just takes it out. What? Did you just see that? Ready? Before, I don't even have to deselect. You can see it. Redo. Boom. Gone. That simple. All right. It's amazing. Now you might be thinking, oh, but did it just leave a hole right there? Yes, there is a, and by the way, you'll notice, much like content aware, it's subtraction, but it's not deletion. So yes, it's removed a lot of that. But look, it's such a small frequency range. In fact, I could have made it even more refined. It's literally 15.56 to 15.50. It's so small, you're never going to hear this gone. And also, you can see that it didn't destroy the content underneath, right? There's no break in the chain here, right? So that's kind of the magic of taking that profile, is that it does an amazing job, and sonically, you're never going to hear this, all right? So that's completely gone. And by the way, now when we look at our frequency analysis, it's gone. Before, look, I just undoing it, you can see.
Okay, Silver Stripes mix number 8.
There it is. Redo. Eliminated. All right? Perfect. And then similarly, as we come down here, now again, we could go to the beginning, and you can see that this is just nesting. Now you might think to yourself, oh, come on, man, anybody could hear that. Yeah, if you've got a subwoofer, but if you've got, if you don't have studio monitors, most speakers don't really replicate sound at 40 or 35 hertz. You might get 40, 45, 50 for sure. 40, 35, 30, not all, unless they're good monitors. So you have to have the right gear to be able to sonically hear this, all right? Again, now as we discussed before, in the waveform view, even if you're new to audio, I mean, if you see something like this, but you don't hear anything, that's a problem, right? If you're seeing that should be just a single flat line that you can barely see. There's stuff in there, we don't want that. But similarly here, the best way to get rid of something like this, I would recommend, again, using our noise print like this, okay? Noise reduction, process, come over here, select the entire file. Now this is subsonics, so I'm going to use subtractive again, 0 spectral decay, 100% reduction, click apply. What's beautiful about this is that, oh, and did I only select it on one channel? I did. How did I do that? That's weird. That's okay. What's interesting here is you'll notice that, again, it preserves all of the frequency content without leaving. There's no holes here, right? There's nothing. You're not going to hear this being gone. You'll never know it was there. I'm zooming in. I'm zooming in. You don't see a black hole here. Here's the bass. This is 25 hertz right here. This is the thump of the sub kick drum. It's completely seamless, completely gone. All right. So it is truly, truly amazing what you can do with this. All right. So take the same. I don't know how I messed that up, but I'll do the same selection here. Okay. Capture noise print. All right, noise reduction. You can just rerun it again. Select entire file, apply. All right, and there we go. Now we're gone. I don't know what I did moments ago. Okay, so really simply, really easily, we just took out that 40 hertz tone, and it's just gone. All right, and now when we play this back again. See, we've got nice. And it's recovering, right? You don't want because that's going to suck, right? Unless that's what you're going for, right? If you're doing low, ominous LFE for a soundtrack, yeah, different story. You don't want that in this. So that's gone. But the bass frequency, the bass sound, all of the bassiness is all there. We didn't lose anything, okay? And we identified it visually with the frequency analysis panel. So that was a pretty long stream to talk about a fairly nerdy and complex process. But if you begin to understand how this works, I promise you it will make you a better audio editor. So just going to bounce over here. Let's see. Good stuff, Ron Sussman. Thank you very much. Stefano, how are you doing? Apollo. Totland. All right. Adobe Cadabra, Evil Cerise. All right. Okay. Looks like there's no more. Okay. I don't see any more questions here. Hold on, Heath. Okay, off topic, but I'm having trouble with auto ducking 2 tracks with the same loudness. What trouble are you having, Heath? And are you using auto duck in Essential Sound, or are you doing it via a sidechain compressor limiter? All right. Tipangi Dewa Studios, please next time help me how to make vocals good louder. Yes, I mean you can see if I actually just did a stream on compression and normalization. It's all about maximizing amplitude just last week, so you can check out the streams on YouTube or on Facebook. Tipangi, that'll tell you how to do that. Also, there have been a couple recent ones on mixing and matching loudness for voices. So both of those streams can help you. Okay. Pierre Julien, how are you? All right. Oh, Donald Ping, you're in headphones. Nice. Okay, people in headphones, we're hearing it. Okay. All right, Ant, no worries there. Lexa Axel, thank you very much. Thanks for watching. Evil Cerise, thank you. Okay, well, that looks like all the questions. Again, for those of you watching on Facebook, assuming that it's... I see it dropped. I've dropped a lot of frames on this stream, so I'm guessing they were dropped there. I don't know. Sorry that I couldn't answer your questions, but I can't see them. My browser is just, it's taken it away. And I just got a message that it's using significant energy. So I don't know what they've done there, but okay. In any case, you can watch the replay on Twitter, Periscope, and YouTube. Until next time, have a great rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. Also, we have our Adobe shutdown next week, so I will not see you on the stream next week. So have a great week. Watch the replays. Increase those view numbers. No. And, you know, I'll be bouncing around every so often on the Twitters. A little bit here and there. I'm going to try and disconnect, so I may not be there very often, but we shall see. All right. Don Lawler. Oh, thank you very much, Don. Well, yes, I really appreciate that. And again, if you missed some of the beginning, you can check out the replay. Thank you, Desiree. All right. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and have a good one. We'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.